You're watching Africa Today. Thank you for staying with us. If you've just joined us, it's a very good evening. One of Kenya's prominent rappers is on a mission to get the youth excited about the upcoming general elections. Octopizzo is asking fans to produce voter registration cards in order to gain entry into his concerts. However, some voters are cynical after years of broken promises. Let's take a look at this.
This is one of Kenya's hottest artists, rapper Octopizzo, and he is in the middle of a campaign aimed at convincing young people to vote in August's elections. At the concert venue, voter registration stations were set up.
For us, it's giving them the understanding that this is the power, the most power you'll ever have as a young person or as a registered voter, that you have a power to fire and hire. You know, and that power has not been told to us. We just think, yeah, you go vote, you go home.
But voters are disillusioned after years of broken promises, corruption scandals and allegations of vote rigging. Election-related violence has also blighted Kenya in the past. In 2007, the country saw clashes that left 1,300 people dead after disputed polls. Octopizzo's campaign is not working. Valentine Ndalo came to see Octopizzo perform. He is not interested in the elections.
I voted in the last election since I had a voter's card, and the people who were elected have disappointed us. They did not help in any way, so this time I've not registered to vote. I don't intend to vote because it doesn't benefit me.
Registration drives have so far netted only 2.5 million new voters, far fewer than half of the 6 million targeted. It is one of the worst performances since the start of multi-party democracy in 1992.
In 96 days, Kenyans will vote for the 5th president of the East African nation. The frontrunners are Raila Odinga, making a 5th attempt to the highest office in the state, and Kenya's current Deputy President William Ruto, who, according to a poll released on Thursday, is favoured by 39% of respondents to Odinga's 32%. Well, to talk us through the intricacies of Kenya's politics is Dr. Westen Shilaho, Senior Research Fellow, University of Johannesburg, journalist Alex Kiarie, and Professor Iraki, Associate Professor, Faculty of Business and Management Sciences at the University of Nairobi. Gentlemen, very good evening. Thank you so much for your time. Alex, I'll start with you. Ruto has characterized Kenyatta and Odinga as the embodiments of dynastic politics and entitlement. The two are sons of Jomo Kenyatta and Oginga Odinga, Kenya's first president and vice president, respectively. Is this a battle between the privileged and the general masses?
That is what he has tried to formulate it to be, or to look to appear as such. However, if you look at the whole political matrix, he is as part of the dynastic leadership as they are, as the people that he's trying to accuse, because this is a gentleman who joined politics at a very young age and was taught the strings of politics in Kenyan style by the professor of politics himself. That's the late former President Daniel Arap Moi. And he has worked his way through and has learned the strings to rise to that level that he is right now. So it is just a political rhetoric that is actually selling to the constituency that he's targeting.
But the impression that we get of his history is that here is a man who's worked his way up, not from a position of privilege, but he is a struggler and relatable potentially to many of the people in Kenya.
Yes, he did have a very difficult background. Grew up in poverty in the Rift Valley region of Kenya. But his current status, he cannot qualify to be like the hustler as he's trying to portray himself to be, because he has enjoyed opulence in his life from a very young age, from his youth, and he sits with the people whom he's now calling, is now terming as dynasties. So he definitely, just like our former president Daniel Arap Moi, also grew up in poverty and also ended up in power. So he's not actually a very unique case, if you may really ask me.
Professor Iraki, Ruto is a former ally of President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is now backing Raila Odinga. Do we have a tale of betrayal here?
I don't know who is betraying who. But if I get your question right, we have a group of mostly wealthy Kenyans who are backing President Uhuru Kenyatta as he backs Azimio leader Raila Odinga. So it's very interesting because at the end of the day, we have what my colleague is talking about, the dynasty versus hustlers. So what Deputy President Ruto has done is to portray himself as a person who is coming from the bottom of the society, a person who is self-made, a person who has pulled himself up from the bootstraps. And he's saying, wait a minute, if I can be where I am, if I've made it where I am, then the majority of the Kenyans who are poor and hustlers can also be there. But on the other side, we have people who are saying, wait a minute, we cannot trust you with power. We cannot entrust the country's future with you because it's true you have struggled through all that. You have gone through all that struggle to be who you are, but you cannot trust you. So there's that conflict between, do we support the status quo or do we support this new dynamic person who is portraying himself as a hustler, as a struggler, as an anti-establishment? So Kenyans are yet to make up their mind on which side of the political divide to support.
Well, Dr. Shilaho, according to polls conducted at the back end of April, 39% of that poll seem to suggest that Ruto is in the lead or his favoured. Where does he draw his popularity from?
Thanks, Hugo. First, I wish to differ with the first speaker. Actually, Ruto has succeeded in framing this election as a dichotomy between dynasties and hustlers, and successfully so. For the simple reason that he's arguing that in the past, he has sided with Daniel Moi, he has sided with Raila Odinga, he has sided with Uhuru Kenyatta. And he's propelled these people to the apex of power in Kenya, though Raila Odinga's victory was contested in 2007. And when it has come to his turn, they have turned against him. They have ganged up against him. So much so that the coalition that Ruto is ranged against actually constitutes Kenyatta, Moi, Odinga axis. And this is the axis that has dominated Kenya's politics and economy since 1963. And so he's gone to the masses and appealed directly to the masses across the board. Whereas the coalition led by Raila Odinga is still stuck in the primordial tribal politics, whereby you place in certain regions, regional barons to undercut Ruto. Ruto has succeeded in appealing to Kenyans across the ethnic divide. And by raising issues to do with the economy, issues to do with poverty, issues to do with marginalization, issues to do with health, issues to do with the jobs. And these are things that Kenyans are grappling with across the board. So I think that's what has given him traction, in as much as he's actually part of the elite in Kenya, but he has succeeded in recasting himself as part of the poor, part of the marginalized, part of the struggling people. And therefore the message is that under his regime, Kenyans who are struggling have a fighting chance.
Alex, do you not feel that this tale of success of this hustler or former hustler is exactly what will inspire people to vote for him?
I totally agree with the third speaker on how William Ruto has cast himself, reinvigorated his political focus, and managed to place himself ahead of the rest through what I can term as proper messaging. He is a very smart politician. He rose from the dust of poverty and has managed to work his way up the ladder to the apex of the political game at a very young age. He's barely actually 65. And he has actually managed to unsettle the status quo in the country through his messaging. However, when we are talking about him being a hustler, I do not think the current William Ruto is a poor man. He was a poor man while he was growing up, but he is not as poor as the people he is trying to identify himself with, the people that is wooing, the ones that have propelled him to where he is. Remember that Ruto is a very, very smart politician. He is young. He's suave. He can appeal to the masses. He has the gift of gab. This is what has been lacking in his opponent's corner. However, there are also other issues that have made Ruto identify himself with the masses. He has managed to convince the people on the ground that you can be what you want to be, and I am willing to give you a chance. As a poor person from nowhere, without a name, without a big family name, we are willing to support you to go and grab power through democratic means, through the ballot. Totally agree with you, but he is not a poor person. He is not a hustler. That's what I meant when I say that just like the former president, Daniel Arap Moi, who also grew up in poverty, he has managed to convince the world that from his background, he is what he is and he's self-made. However, on the other end, the ones who are opposing him are the likes of President Uhuru Kenyatta and the former opposition leader Raila Odinga, who is now in his corner. This aspect of being from big families or big names is also playing into William Ruto's hands, and it's definitely putting Ruto ahead of the game.
All right, I'm gonna stop you there, Alex, and turn to Professor Iraki. Now, Ruto is 55 years old, and he's battling against Raila Odinga, who's 22 years older than him at about 77. Does this appeal to the masses, the fact that he is 55, a lot younger, and potentially more relatable to the young population of Kenya?
That might be true to some extent, because if you look at the past presidents, they have been a bit elderly. You look at Mwai Kibaki, you look at Daniel Arap Moi, you look at Jomo Kenyatta himself. They have been a bit elderly men. So it is always seen as a country led by the elderly. So when you come as a young man aged 55, and you are likely to appeal to the youth, likely to feel people are supposed to see you as a fresh face, as somebody who can excite us, somebody who has energy, somebody who can lead this country to a new phase of economic transformation. But I think if you look at what is happening now, each of them want to get a running mate, and the age is becoming a factor. So that if Raila Odinga gets a running mate, he probably should get a very young running mate. Maybe Ruto has no problem with the question of age, because he'll probably get a young person or a young woman to be a running mate. But I think age is a factor. But I think what makes this campaigning very interesting is not even the question of age. It's a question of who are the voters in this country. Most of the voters in this country are very young. About 42% of Kenyans are probably 14 years and younger. So they are able to associate themselves with Ruto because of that age and because of the messaging. He has succeeded, in my opinion, in showing people that, as my colleague put it, that you can rise from anywhere and become a leader. And that message is very appealing, particularly when you consider that Kenyans are admirers of the American cultural system. Because Americans believe that you can be anybody, like Obama. So when he passes that message to the youth, is a very powerful message. Remember that the word hustler, as it is used in Kenya, is not a negative term. I've been telling Kenyans that and other people that the word hustler is very respectable. It's a person who can take care of his interests, you can take care of yourself without government support. So when you talk to such people who are the masses in this country, it is likely to be very appealing. And you're likely to find a lot of people following you.
Dr. Shilaho, I'm going to come to you with our final question. Now, in the clip, you probably would have seen it, where one of the rappers was encouraging young people to go out and register to vote. And voter apathy has been a huge problem, not just in Kenya, but generally on the African continent. Could this be a factor come August 9th this year?
Yes, Hugo, that could be for a number of reasons. First, it's because young people have every reason to ask themselves whether if they turn up to vote come August 9, their vote will count. For the simple reason that Kenya has got a history of electoral fraud. So they're asking whether actually what at the end of the day will be counted will actually be a reflection of the way they would have voted, a reflection of the will of the people of Kenya. They doubt that a lot. Secondly, after every other election, there is always violence. So young people are wondering, what will come after voting? They are not sure whether there will be political stability after voting. Thirdly, after voting, people who previously were competing against one another tend to shake hands and close ranks, and therefore there is no one who is checking the other. So all these things are likely to create cynicism, which is very well founded, that if voting is reduced to a ritual that people participate in, but that the outcome of the voting does not translate into transformation in people's lives, socially, politically, and economically, people are likely to stay away, because that vote must count. It must result into clean water, must result into education for their children and for young people who want to go to school. It must result into food security. It must result into jobs. And these things are not reflected after voting. So young people can't be excused if they exhibit voter apathy. Secondly, and much more fundamental, is that Kenya's elections are extremely expensive, and for no reason at all. In fact, the last time I checked the statistics, Kenya's elections were second in terms of being expensive, only second to Papua New Guinea, spending to the tune of $25.4 per voter. That's expensive in a poor country such as Kenya. So in Africa, Kenya's elections are at the top. And therefore, all these factors conspire to make people wonder whether voting actually is worth it.
Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time unpacking for us that situation ahead of Kenya's general elections in August this year. We certainly look forward to speaking to you again near the time. That was Dr. Westen Shilaho, Senior Research Fellow, University of Johannesburg, Alex Kiarie, journalist, and Professor Iraki, Associate Professor at the Faculty of Business and Management Sciences, University of Nairobi. You're watching